So good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to this information meeting on societal transformation for climate action, which is the new call released by Mistra at the beginning of this month, September. And Mistra is the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Environmental Research. I'll get back to a little bit more about the background of Mistra in a moment. But just to say a little bit about the meeting, we're very glad that you all could join us. We have quite a large interest for this meeting, which means we won't be able to allow you to show yourselves on a video. However, we are happy to try to answer all your questions. If you type them in the Q&A, you could do that throughout the meeting or at the end. We've also received a few questions ahead of this meeting, and we're happy to also answer your questions after the meeting. And we will also try to summarize these questions in written form on our webpage before long. So good morning again. My name is Linda Bell, and I am one of the program managers at Mistra. And I'm joining you today together with my colleague Åsa Moberg, who's also programs director, with Birgitta Jonsson Pangen, who's the financial director of Mistra, who knows all about the budget and economy issues, and also our colleague Thomas Nilsson, who's joining us to support with technical issues, but who's also very knowledgeable about Mistra and our programs as such. So we're all here to try and answer your questions as good as we can in this meeting. And we've said that we are able to join you until 10:30. However, if we don't get a lot of questions, we will finish this meeting by probably around 10. So this is the agenda that we have for today. First, a few words about Mistra and the current funding scheme that we are in which this call is part, and then the scope of the current call. A little bit more about who can apply and the impact logic that we would like you to describe in your program, evaluation criteria, budget and economy, and then questions and answers at the end. So I'll now proceed to say a little bit about Mistra for those of you who are not familiar with us as a funder. So Mistra is an independent research foundation, not part of the state funders in Sweden, but we have the establishment was by the Swedish government in 1994, and we were then endowed with a capital which we invest on our own. We have statutes that govern Mistra, and in the statutes it says, I'll get back to that a little bit more in detail also, but the basic foundation of the statute says that we should fund environmental strategic research. We've also been a pioneer when it comes to sustainable investments, both in Sweden, but also, I would say, with some global impact in the way we have invested our capital. At the beginning when Mistra was founded, we received an endowment of 2.5 billion Swedish crowns, and the assets today, of course pending the stock market and so on, but are around 3.2 billion Swedish crowns. And we've also since start invested around 4.6 billion in research. So this means that we have invested quite wisely, but also at the same time pushing sustainable investments, as I said. The number of ongoing programs and centers at Mistra are around 20. They normally run for 4 years with the possibility of a continuation for another 4 years after midterm review. And since start, some 60 programs and centers have been financed. Mistra statutes, and the reason why I'm going into this a little bit in depth is that these govern everything that we do at Mistra. And when we discuss with the external advisors and the external reviewers of Mistra programs, they're also instructed to read these statutes in detail. So the purpose of the foundation is to fund research of strategic importance for a good living environment. That's the Article 1 of the statutes. And it also says that the foundation should promote the development of strong research environments of highest international class with importance for Sweden's future competitiveness, and that the research should be of importance for finding solutions to important environmental problems and for sustainable development of society. And that we should also make sure that opportunities for achieving industrial applications. The way we set up the programs are that they are interdisciplinary and cross-sectorial. This is to do with the statutes, because if we are to solve these quite complex environmental problems, we believe that we need to go ahead in this way. We set up the programs that they are from very start in collaboration with stakeholders from different sectors of society. And as I mentioned before, they normally run for around 4 years with the possibility of a 4-year extension, pending on the successful midterm review. And before the programs begin, and also at midterm, they are reviewed by an international peer review panel. The program director of a Mistra program is expected to work full-time, and we also want an external board to support the program. And the program manager from Mistra is also adjunct to this board and follows the project throughout its lifetime. At Mistra, we require annual reporting on both scientific projects, progress on benefits and budget. So we do work quite closely together with our programs. So scientific excellence and societal benefits are equally important to us. And this is something that my colleague also will discuss a little bit more when we come into the actual evaluations of the call. In programs where we require co-funding, we usually have quite big consortia. 10 to 20 partners is not uncommon. We also have even larger programs with quite a lot of partners. However, in this specific call, we do not require co-funding, and so we envision perhaps the possibility of setting up a smaller program with fewer partners. The host of the program must be a Swedish institution. But researchers and organizations active outside of Sweden may participate and also get funding. So now moving into the current call, we will only fund one program of a maximum of 40 million Swedish crowns, and this is also the way we normally operate at Mistra. We have a competition. We do not usually fund projects as many other funders do, individual project, but we fund one large program. So there will only be one winner of this call, to speak in those words. We do not require co-funding for this call. Research groups jointly with civil society organizations and the public sector and other stakeholders are expected to apply jointly. And you need to discuss with the partners that you envision to have in your program at a very early stage to get a coherent program idea together. And the purpose of this call, I'm sure most of you have read the call text, but it is to facilitate societal transformation for climate action through research and innovation. And the background of the call is also the decade of action and the fact that we only have 10 more years until Agenda 2030 is supposed to be implemented. And in line with Mistra statutes, again, the research program shall be of strategic and environmental importance. And in this call, we specifically emphasize the role of civil society and civil society organizations in a broader sense. The focus of the call is on Swedish society and Swedish societal transformations for climate change, but we do envision a broader EU level and/or international perspective to be included because of the nature, of course, of the climate challenge. And the focus areas that are listed in the call text for climate action are, as I said, civil society, first of all, but also equality and just transition. And the third one is digitalization and the role of digitalization for climate action, both as enabler, but also as an obstacle in certain cases. So those are the three focus areas that we've looked at in this call. And then moving on to who can actually apply in this call. Well, we do address research groups in all academic disciplines, working at Swedish higher education institutes and research institutes. But as I said before, also including stakeholders, civil society, public sectors, and also enterprises to some degree. The principal applicant and planned program host must be a Swedish institution, as I said before. But researchers and organizations active outside Sweden are of course, welcome to participate as well. Only legal entities can apply for funding. My colleague Birgitta will discuss this a little bit more in detail a little bit later in this meeting. But we do need the organization or the organizations that apply for funding to be legal entities.
Yes, and then I'll continue. First, I also want to clarify that we will post all these, the slides, the presentation on the website later on, so you will get access to the presentation. I want to explain a little bit about the proposal, that what should be in there. And we have a maximum of 40 pages. There you should fill in the summary, both in English and in Swedish. It should contain the vision, aims, and expected impacts. And this should also be visualized in an impact logic, which is part of the 3 appendices that should be added to illustrate how the results are connected to the deliverables from activities and work packages to the program aims and visions. Yes, this should be both in the text and also visually presented. In the proposal, you should describe the scientific value of the program and relate this to the state of the art. Benefits to society should be presented, as well as the management and organization. The skills and the networks are to be included in the proposal. And also a description of program work packages and deliverables. There should also be a section on communication. And presenting the budget, you should use the budget template that we provide and that Birgitta will shortly present later also today. And this should fit within 40 pages. And in addition, 3 appendices must be attached, and no more than these 3 appendices, which cover then the impact logic, a 1-page visual illustration, CVs for up to 10 key people and maximum of 1 page per person, and also a certificate from the planned program host. To a little bit more describe the appendix on impact logic. Linda, if you can switch slide, thanks. We want you to provide an illustration, and we foresee that this impact logic is visualized there through making clear the logic behind and connections between the activities to be performed within the program, the results of these activities, and the outcomes anticipated, as well as the impacts expected. And to clarify a little bit more these components, the results are expected to be able to be measured or described within the time frame of the program, and the program is clearly the origin of these results. This may be services or products, academic publications, policy briefs, or established networks, for example. The outcomes should describe what the program aimed to achieve at the target group level, whereas the impact should describe contributions that the program aimed for at the societal level. And this should be both described in text in the proposal, but also illustrated in the appendix. And then a little bit on the evaluation criteria. So every proposal will be evaluated against the 4 criteria specified here and in the call text. And the potential for environmental problem solving and contribution to sustainable development are crucial overall. Firstly, the proposals will be evaluated regarding the approach, how far the program has a central coherent idea and an innovative direction. And this should, as I said earlier, also be described in this impact logic. The scientific quality will be evaluated, how well the program meets the requirements of advanced research expertise, theoretical proficiency, and methodological quality. And as Linda said, benefits are equally important, societal benefits, and how highly developed the collaboration with users of the research results is, and this is expected to be throughout the program, and which supportive communication processes and methods will be used to attain effective implementation. And the 4th evaluation criteria focuses on management and organization, the manner in which the program will be integrated into the host organization, how it will be governed and structured, and to what degree it will make efficient use of resources. And the evaluation process is that we gather an international expert panel, which will evaluate all the research proposals according to these criteria. All the research proposals that meet the formal criteria of the call, that is. And there is also a hearing part of this process. So some of the consortia will be asked to be part of a hearing with the international expert panel. So Linda, if you can please switch to the next slide. And there you also see the dates of the process that we close the call on January 29th. And then the evaluation process is in January, February, and a little bit of March. And at the Mistra board meeting in March, we foresee that the decision will be taken on which consortia that gets funding for this program. And the preliminary start of the program is foreseen in June next year.
One of the appendices to the call is the document Allowable Costs and Co-funding, and that document will support you in your budget work. And in this document, you will find the different cost categories allowed for Mistra funding. And it's direct and indirect costs. And all direct costs are costs that are directly a result of the program. So it's driven by the program you run. Indirect costs are costs that are not program specific, but concern common resources and also premises and your normal workplaces. Mistra finance indirect costs at the higher education institutions with maximum 225,000 Swedish crowns per full-time equivalent and year. For other institutes, government agencies, or other organizations, there must be an agreement with Mistra about the percentage. You have a markup that you put on. And you have to agree that with Mistra if you haven't done that before. And only legal entities can apply for Mistra funding. And we mean that there is a registration ID with some kind of authority, the county administration, the tax authority, depending on what kind of organization you are. And to be a legal entity, it also means that you are able to enter into an agreement. And of course, if you have employees, you are responsible for paying your taxes and social costs and so on. I think we can take the next slide. With the Excel. There is an Excel template, and we use the same template for all calls. And in this one, there is no requirement for co-funding, even though there are columns and rows for that in the template. So this is for you to, this shows what information we need, but you can adapt it to the program that you call for. So in the first table, for example, there is a row for number of work packages. So if you have more, you add rows, and if you have less, you take away rows. And in the other ones, you have further down, you have rows for number of partners and so on, and that's also for co-funding. And if you, as there are no requirement, you can leave them empty, or you take them away depending on how much, maybe also space you have in your proposal. We think that 1 to 2 pages, 1 page is for the table perhaps, and some comments. That should be, you need to include it in your proposals, 40 pages. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Birgitta, and thank you, Åsa. Sorry, there we go. But just to summarize this call, the expected budget is a total of 40 million Swedish crowns over 4 years. And no co-funding required, as I said before, which means that up to 100% of the total program budget will be Mistra's financial contribution in this case. The length of the research proposal, maximum 40 pages. And as Birgitta said, in those 40 pages, we do expect you to include a budget of 1 to 2 pages. And and then in addition to these 40 pages, we allow the appendices, the CVs, and the certificate from the program host. And the deadline is Friday, the 29th of January, 2021 at 4 p.m. And you send the application as a single PDF to mail@mistra.org. So I've seen that you've already typed in some questions in the Q&A, and I will now try to see. I'm also seeing that we have some clusters of questions, so I'm going to try and see if I can ask my colleagues to support here in answering some of them. So if we start by indirect costs, so Birgitta, this is a question for you, I think. The question was, at what point do you agree with Mistra about the indirect costs before finalizing the budget? So this is a question, I suppose, from organizations who have not previously been financed by Mistra, because if you already have a background with the Mistra program, then you usually have an agreement with Mistra. But if you don't already, when do you agree about the indirect costs before finalizing the budget? That's the question. So I don't know, Birgitta, if you can support with this one.
Yes, I think you should agree before you finalize your proposal. And what we need to know is how you calculate your indirect costs and what components there are. So it's the kind of time when you need to know how you should calculate your budget, because it depends. It's how much room will be left for other costs. So.
But I'm guessing, Birgitta, so get in touch with us as soon as possible, right? Because
yes. Yeah,
before
you put too much work
exactly.
maybe into it. So send an email or
send an email to Birgitta. Yeah, we'll give her a call, because she will support you with this also. But really don't do this the final week before the deadline.
No.
Yeah, so please get in touch as soon as you can. Okay, thank you. Then I have a couple of questions, actually, or a few questions about to what extent private for-profit companies, as far as I understand the questions, can apply for funding in this call. And again, I don't know, Birgitta or Åsa, would you like to support me with this one? I mean, normally what happens in Mistra programs is that we require co-funding, and the co-funding then usually comes from private enterprises joining us in kind with their contribution, then counting as co-funding. And so for this call, we don't require co-funding, but we do not, and I think there are some restrictions though. Birgitta, you can support me here, I think, with regards to us directly funding private for-profit enterprises. So we don't normally do that. So I would say that if you intend to bring in private enterprises into this program plan that you're putting together, then they should join with their own funding in general. Am I correct about that, Birgitta?
Yes, I think you gave a good answer to this question.
Yeah, yeah. So again, no co-funding is required, but if you bring in private enterprises, then they should bring in their own funding, and then you do actually have co-funding. So your program becomes a little bit bigger than the maximum 40 million, depending on how much co-funding they bring in. I have another question, I think, where Birgitta will also be required to support me, and that is the certificate of the program host. What do we mean by that? What is a certificate? And is there a template for the certificate for the program host?
Maybe, do you want to
Or
answer?
Åsa, yes, or Åsa can answer this one maybe. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's actually, it's not no template, but it's described in the call text what should be included there. So it's a certificate confirming that the planned program host is prepared to assume the role of hosting the program and to make the requisite resources available, and also that the program host accepts the rules that Mistra has regarding indirect costs. And it should be signed by the Vice Chancellor, Chief Executive or equivalent. So those are the things that should be in that appendix, but it's no specific template for that.
And again, I would say just a recommendation would be to try and not do this at the last minute, because we have had some cases where the certificate has been missing or incomplete, and this is quite important to us that we have, to be able to actually view your application as eligible. Then we need to have the certificate on the 29th of January together with your application. So don't ask at the last minute, right? Again. Okay, I have another question, I think, to Åsa, or perhaps to myself. Must all three focus areas be addressed in the application? We're speaking the three focus areas that are mentioned in the call text. So do they all need to be addressed, or can you just choose one or two and put in other focus areas perhaps?
No, the idea with this call is to actually have all these three areas within, and also to connect them. And we see that as the one of the main ideas with the call, to actually see interactions and also like possible synergies and conflicts between these, or also with other sustainability goals. So you need to cover all three of them.
Yeah. Thomas, would you also like to come in and say something on this topic?
Not directly on this topic, no.
Sorry, I was just misreading something in the Q&A here. But then I will continue and see if we have some more questions. We have a question, can African civil society organizations participate in this call?
Do you want me to answer?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and the main thing is that the proposals are headed by like a main applicant, which will be the program host, and that needs to be a Swedish institution. So you need then to be part of one such consortia. but that's possible for organizations outside of Sweden as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm having a bit of a technical difficulty at this moment because I can't see the questions and answers anymore, the questions that you typed in. So perhaps Åsa, could you take over for a moment?
Yes, and maybe I can take one that was present also to me. So the question then I can ask you, Linda.
Yes.
So we have the background report for this call, which is also on the website. And this relates to the background report where there is one more focus area, transforming futures, which is mentioned in the background report.
Yes.
But not specifically considered in the call. And the question is if this is because it was not judged as a priority area for Mistra, or rather that it should be transversal to the 3 focus areas mentioned in the call.
Yes. So the way that we've discussed this is that we had these 4 focus areas in the background report. But when we looked a little bit closer at the call and the focus of the call, we came to the conclusion that the focus has to be this decade of action, which means that obviously visions of the future are very important, but we also think that focusing on here and now and moving into action, accelerating sustainable solutions and putting them into practice is actually even more important to us. You know, that's not saying that envisioning the future and alternative futures doesn't matter, but we don't think that will be necessary as part of this call then. You can include it if you want to, but you, as also said before, the 3 other focus areas must be included, they're required. This could be an additional one, but you can also you should also feel free to include other ones that you in your group community envision as important in this case. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thanks. So I'll continue. There's one question about the host institution, if this needs to be a research or academic institution, or if it could also be another type of organization. I don't know if Birgitta, if you want to say something on that, or Linda.
I would say that in the absolute majority of Mistra program, there is a university or a research institution, a host. But with a few, with some exception. So I would say maybe to ask to discuss it with Mistra if that is the case, or your idea, if it's a solution that we can accept.
Good. I'm not seeing the questions again, so I can perhaps ask another one to Birgitta, and that is how do we consider the participants from civil society a direct or indirect cost? And the way I interpret that question is whether the participants from civil society in this call can get funding directly from Mistra.
Yes, I would say yes. If they are, I mean, a part of the program and the consortium as such, they can also get funding from Mistra.
Yes, and as long as they're legal entities, as we said before, right?
Yes,
Just to remind you that we,
yes,
because civil society is quite a broad term with all sorts of organizations. But for us to be able to fund, we do need the organizations to be registered as legal entities.
And also you need to be part of the program and to enter into an agreement.
Yes. And there's also a question when we write partners, in one of the first slides, do we refer to participating researchers or participating institutions? What do we mean by partners? Also, would you like to
Yes,
and I think also a question that is quite close to that one: what is the difference between a program and a project proposal? And do we mean by program the consortium, or do we mean something else when we say a Mistra program? Because we're using a bit of a different terminology than other funders usually use. So
yes, so we usually don't use the word project, but the call is for a research program. It's a wide it's a 40 million program based on a consortia together, led by a host institution. So it's program that we use generally. And then if we might have said project, it's just a mistake. About the partners.
But also, can I just
Yeah.
another addition there, I think, because I do think this can be a little bit confusing. So when we talk about the program, the Mistra program, we mean the consortium and the partners in the consortium, the institutions, the organizations that are part of the consortium, but we also mean the idea, the research idea, the vision of the program, so the contents. So for us, the program is sort of everything. It seems, maybe I'm just making it more confusing, but I think that's quite important also. It's not only the participating institutions, but it's also the program. A Mistra program is also what the program tries to achieve. And as you were saying also before, with the impact logic, at the end, we do have a vision for our programs to all contribute to a sustainable society, right? So the programs all have their way of doing that with the content of their research and innovation portfolio, of course.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
About this with the partners, so that you all also a little bit answered now then. So it's the organizations, the participating institutions that are partners to the program.
Exactly. So we don't mean individual researchers when we talk about partners. We have another question. I don't know if maybe Thomas or Åsa can support with this one. Will your evaluation of proposals for this call be influenced by the scope of previous Mistra programs? Are you more or less likely to get funding from Mistra if the research idea overlaps with or relates to or builds on research that has previously been funded by Mistra?
So I would say that it shouldn't be influencing as such, but the motivation and the description of the program could of course be strengthened by motivating building on previous results from any other type of research and so on. So the evaluation criteria are the basis for the evaluation panel making their judgment. So no, that should not influence the evaluation.
And moving on to the evaluation, we also have a question about the peer review process. Where do we find our experts? Are they international or do they come from specific countries?
Yeah, they are international, and it's important for us that they don't have conflict of interest. So in that sense, it's usually harder to have Swedish participants of the panel, yeah, it's a mix of countries.
Yeah,
and they are usually like 4 or 5 people.
Yes. Another question, is it expected or recommended that PhD students, doctoral students, are part of the Mistra program and do part of the research in the Mistra program?
That's very common, yeah.
Yes, that is common, and I would say probably both expected and recommended from our side, right? Yeah, that's yeah. So we have also a question about, let me see if I can pick this one up. the impact of the proposed program, how is that to be assessed? How do we assess the impact? Or rather our expert reviewers, how do they assess impact when they look at the proposals that have come in for the specific call?
How do they assess the future impact? Or
yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what's important, I guess, is that it's explained in the application how you see that the program should lead to this impact, so they can follow the thread and your thought about how you plan the program. So they can, based on that, judge the like how relevant and how probable it is that this is the impact that will result.
Mm.
Should I ask you a question, Linda?
If you want to.
So there was a question about the background report.
Yeah.
How should you consider the background report? Is it normative or prescriptive for the programs that are applied for?
I would say the background report is one important input to those interested in addressing the call. However, we do also in the call text mention a few other background reports that can be quite important for you to look at. For instance, the European Commission's Green Deal and the writings around the just transition mechanism, for instance, that also quite clearly go into detail about the equality part of this call, right? So, and then at a global level, of course, there are the Agenda 2030 goals. So I would say it is one important piece of it, but we're not that prescriptive. We also believe that there are a lot of good ideas out there that are not picked up in the background report or in the call text, that are out there in the research community, and not, to say the least, also in the NGO community, in the civil society community. So yeah. Another question, co-funding is not a requirement in this call, as we said before. And if you've looked at previous Mistra calls, it's actually quite unusual, I would say. I don't know, going back in history, there are probably examples of calls without without co-funding, but in the last few years, this has more or less been a requirement, I would say. So the question here is, co-funding is not a requirement for this call, but is it viewed as positive if the application does have co-funding? What would you say, Åsa?
Yes, I would say it's not the question of having co-funding or not, but maybe more the explanation of how different stakeholders are engaged and the motivation of the composition and so on. So the idea here is that the co-funding is not part of the criteria for the call to enable also other type of organizations to be main partners, maybe more easily than in other calls where we have co-funding as requirement.
Yeah, so then in other words, it will be, the answer will be, it's not actually kind of a positive thing as such. It all depends on what the consortium looks like and what the, yeah. So, okay, thank you. And I have a few questions also from different civil society organizations, wondering if we have a sort of platform where they can meet and connect, and also from researchers wondering where they can find civil society organizations where they're looking for partners from this side. This is actually something that we have discussed. It is a bit difficult. We're quite a small institution at Mistra, and we don't have a lot of resources to arrange matchmaking and so on. I will mention that there are, in Sweden at least, some umbrella organizations that support the civil society. One is called Ideal Arena. And at Ideal Arena, a lot of civil society organizations are organized and get some support. And this would also be a possibility, I think, for researchers looking for civil society organizations to join in this call, perhaps to get in touch with them. But we don't have, unfortunately, resources to do a lot of organized matchmaking events. So, yeah, unfortunately.
So, Linda, can I give one to you again? Yes. There's a question on if it's welcome to have more of an action-based focus of the program rather than a theory-heavy, of course, not excluding theory.
I would say yes. I mean, that's something that we're interested in exploring in this call. It's not, again, something that we've done a lot at Mistra. But yes, I think, you know, given how the call is framed, again, with putting solutions into practice rather than a lot of new theory being required, perhaps, or new technical solutions. We do think that could be an important part of a Mistra program. Yeah, of course.
And also connected to the content, there are a couple of questions on whether there is a need for a focus on a specific sector, any sector, if all sectors of society should be included, or yeah.
Well, so I mean, the focus again is on climate, so that will, I suppose, narrow it down to some extent. But we don't want to be prescriptive about this. I mean, I think on one hand, it would be difficult to kind of encompass all sectors in society. That would be, I can't really envision what that program would look like. But we don't want to be restrictive and say, you know, one sector or two sectors either. So no, I think that's really up to the people planning the program to detail that themselves. Yeah. So we have a lot of, actually quite a few questions about the kind of beyond Sweden aspects and the outside of Sweden aspects, and how we envision non-Swedish participants to be able to join. And how can we, so can you say something about this also, what kind of proportion of budget could be spent on perhaps you know, going directly perhaps to partners outside of Sweden and so on?
Well, yes, there's no specific restriction on part of budget where it's going. But of course, the host institution needs to be Swedish. Mm-hmm. And also, as you mentioned earlier, Linda, the scope is partly like focusing on Sweden, but also taking a broader context into perspective. So of course the partner composition and the budget distribution needs to be well motivated and fit well to the program approach. Mm-hmm. So that's the key issue to make it clear why you include the organizations that are included and why they get the part of the budget that you propose.
Yeah. Good. So we have a question again, I think from somebody from the research side, saying if we want to engage a nonprofit organization to reimburse them for the time that they spend in the project or the program, we should say program, sorry. How do we do that? So are there rules at Mistra regarding how to reimburse non-profit NGOs? Birgitta, I don't know if you want to come in here with this one.
We don't have any specific rules. I think you can find some guidelines, find some some guidelines in this document, allowable costs, what kind of cost Mistra can fund, salary costs and, it's travel costs, even though you should try to minimize the travel. So please read there, and it's also about co-funding and what costs you can include. So I think otherwise, if you have specific questions, please come with those when you are preparing your proposal, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And we have
also,
yes.
But there was a question before about these civil organizations. I just want to say also that they don't need to be a partner. They can also, if it's a lot of administration also connected to that, but they can also be reimbursed by another partner, so you can engage them without them being a partner too.
Okay, so there are different ways of setting this up. So you can even have them as a core partner, or you can have them joining and being reimbursed by one of the other partners then.
Depending on maybe the level of their corporate or participation.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, we have several questions. Perhaps we already answered this, but we might repeat it again then. Can only higher education institutions be the program host of a Mistra program? Or are there other organizations that can be the program host?
I think Birgitta answered it earlier, so I'll give it a little try also. The most common way of that Mistra programs are led is that it's an academic research institution heading the program as a program host. There are some other cases, for example, sector organizations and so on, but it's I think what Birgitta also said is it's recommended that you contact us and discuss the possibilities, since it's such an important role and a big consortia, and also that the program should deliver also scientific results. So it's good to discuss with us a little bit the possibilities of different types of organizations that we see, what the possibilities are to be program host and to lead a program. So take that discussion with us before you take it too far.
Yes, that's good. We mentioned before that, or there was a previous question on PhD students and whether they could be, it was possible to have them join, or even a recommendation from our side. Then, of course, there are different setups for PhDs in different countries, and in Sweden, the PhD program is rather long. So Birgitta, here's another one for you, and this is sort of a favorite one because it comes back all the time in all the Mistra programs, actually. Do we cover full-time for all the 4 years, and what about the course part that is also for PhD students in Sweden? Something that also needs to be included. So what part of the PhD program do we actually cover with the 4+4 year setup that we have at Mistra?
We do not fund their teaching time, what they do as part of their education, but if they attend to some courses that is relevant for their education and the program, we found that. So I don't know if that was an answer to the question.
Yeah, I think so, but it's also the question of is it really possible, the way I read the question at least, is it really possible to get a PhD through in the 4 years of the Mistra funding? Because the second part, the second phase, is of course depending on a positive review. So it's really hard to calculate in that way. What's our view on that generally?
I'm not really. I would like to see the question here.
Another question is if we cover full time for all the 4 years, and I'm also the reading question is if you can actually get through in the 4 years. I don't know. Maybe Åsa can say something on previous experiences from other Mistra programs when it comes to PhD students.
Yes, of course. There can be some delays in like appointing PhDs and so on. So you might start a little bit later in the program, and also there might be cases when you are on maybe a parental leave or something like that during your PhD period, and in those cases we try to be a bit flexible in prolonging the time for the PhD students to get through with the 4 years, but this must of course be motivated and discussed with us in these cases when this occur. And it's not a matter of getting more funding for this, but just to prolong the time when the funding is available in these special cases.
Yes, we have, I think, in general, been quite generous when it comes to that, right,
Yes.
Birgitta? So we're not super strict about the timing itself. So, and of course, it's also in our interests that the PhD students get through and are able to be ready with their dissertation. So, okay, so. Do partners outside of Sweden need to be legal entities, or does this criteria apply only to hosts, or I guess to Swedish partners would be the questions there?
I think that all participating partners should be legal companies.
Yes. So this requirement is for all partners, regardless of where they are in the world. They need to be legal entities, right? Recognized by the authorities in that specific countries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then I have another question about the geographical relationship here. So perhaps Åsa can come in. Must the program have a national geographical starting point? Partners all over Sweden, or is it okay with a smaller geography, or perhaps with one region?
So we don't prescribe that, but it's you should motivate your choice, of course, and how you fulfill the aims of the program, and also you're evaluated on the evaluation criteria. So it's not specified like that.
Good. We have another question then on the for-profit companies. And as we previously stated, we envision them mostly, or to the largest extent, then as in kind, and then of course there will be some co-funding involved in that particular program if you do have for-profit companies on board here. But the question is here: would it be possible to include a small startup with a critical technology for a program idea, and in that case then again to be funded by Mistra in this case? So is there a difference? Do we make a difference with perhaps an SME compared to a large company? Birgitta is looking.
I would say no. It's maybe more the type of company here that can give restrictions to what we can fund.
So the for-profit itself is
yeah,
the
because
and we should perhaps also mention this is also to do with our status as a foundation, where there are certain legal and tax restrictions to what we are allowed to fund, right? So we love the innovative startups as much as anybody, but so this is we do have some restrictions as a foundation. We are the way we were founded also in 1994. Yes, so thank you. Let me see if we have any more questions that we can pick up at this point. Thank you for writing a lot of good questions. I think a few of them we might need to come back to perhaps in writing. We have one that says, what is meant by resources or requisite resources to provided by the program host, office spaces, infrastructure, and so on? Is this not what is supposed to be covered by the overhead or the indirect costs? So what do we mean by those resources to be provided by the program host?
Do you want to answer, Birgitta? Or?
Yes, it's resources that will be covered by the indirect cost, but it's maybe more that there are resources free to give the time that it's needed to run the program. Maybe that is what we mean with that writing. So, yeah, the costs are then covered with these indirect costs. So it takes time to coordinate and administer the program.
Yeah. So Linda, how many applications do we expect for the call?
We never know. So this is also very interesting for us to see. We have, I think in recent years, have had 3, 4 proposals and some calls, and up to perhaps 10, I don't know, yeah. But it is quite a big effort to put together a proposal for a Mistra call. We are aware of that, and we're also aware of the fact that, especially for civil society organizations, this is especially difficult because of the restrictions of time and so on, and very small resources within these organizations. So yeah, we're aware that it is a big effort to put together a program proposal for Mistra call. So we have an additional question. So this call would allow the possibility of a second period of funding, depending on the review, of course. So is that then the idea also to continue for this program, if successful, to continue for another 4 years after the first 4-year period? And do we then want the proposals to have that time frame when they actually write their proposal?
Yes, that's the format of the Mistra programs, that it's you apply for 4 year, but you have also an 8-year perspective already in this application, and then we have this what we call midterm evaluation after a little bit more than 3 years, where you also then propose for the second phase of another 4 years, and based on a successful evaluation of what you've done so far and your thoughts about the next period, you can also get extra 4-year funding.
Yeah, but then you are supposed to use the same proposal that you already wrote for the first term, or do you write another proposal?
Yeah, you write a new proposal, and of course that should be based on results and experiences from the first phase. So it can continue in more or less the same direction, but it could also change a bit based on how society developed or other research done, or your own research and results, experiences.
And are you actually obliged, I mean, are you required, to use or to have the exact same consortium for the phase 2 if you apply for it, or can you change?
That can also change, yeah. So it could be both add or that's somebody feels that maybe they have participated and got the thing out of the program that they wanted, or you need to get some new scientific dimensions into the program, or new stakeholders in. So that can also change.
Mm-hmm. Good. And we should also perhaps mention that also the beginning of this meeting talked about the impact logic and the structure that might have, and this is something that the midterm reviewers also look quite closely at to see whether the program is actually fulfilled, or has been able to kind of follow its own structure when it comes to impact logic, and then building upon that, then the phase 2 application is usually written with some new, as you're saying, ideas and so on, of course, also included there. Yeah, so that's the way this usually works. Yes, I don't know if we have any other questions.
Maybe this one, if you have some idea of the usual size of the team, how many organizations and number of individuals that are usually involved?
Yes, I think there's quite a big variation, I would say, within the Mistra programs that are now running. I mentioned before that there are some programs, especially those with co-funding requirements. There are some programs that we have like a 30% co-funding requirement, and then it has been the case, I think, that quite a few companies need to be included actually to kind of meet the requirement of the co-funding, not only financially, but they also, of course, need to have some part of the research content of the innovation in the program. So there are some examples of very big consortia. However, in this case, we are, I think it's really up to the the partners involved to decide. If you spread yourself very thinly, it will be quite difficult for you, I think, to explain how each and every organization can really contribute to the idea or to the impact also that you want to try and achieve for climate action in this case. So there's a bit of a difficulty, I think, that could be difficult to have too many organizations involved. And I think it is important, I think, as you also said, that it's crucial to explain how every partner and every stakeholder, every organization, actually, what their role is, their unique role is, and how they will be able to contribute something to the results that you want to achieve at the end, the societal impact at the end of the impact logic scale there. So don't know that this is a very precise answer, but we try. And we also, we are also not that prescriptive in that way. So yeah, there's a freedom for you to put together the program as you see fit. Let's see, any additional questions? Who are the midterm reviewers? Yeah, we didn't say anything about this before, so that's also, are they the same reviewers as the reviewers that we invite to look at the program proposals that come in after January 29th? Do we have them on call all the time? No, not really.
No, it's generally not the same group of people. There might be some or one of the evaluators of the proposals might also join in the midterm review, but we put together a group of people also for this specifically, and it's usually both academics and stakeholders that are part of the midterm review to be able to assess all of the parts of the program.
Yeah, so for this specific call then, it will be likely that we have at least one reviewer with quite a lot of experience of civil society to join us also. But we do use, for every review at Mistra, we use an international peer review panel. And this is also, of course, to try to avoid any conflict of interest that we might encounter. We previously had meetings were previously physical at the Mistra office, which of course was a bit of a difficulty for us as an environmental organization. We try to avoid travel, and so in this way I think Corona has helped us a bit, because now we do all the reviews remotely, so that has reduced our own CO2 imprint. So
yes, so that's also maybe good to say that the hearings are also like online now, that we talked about. The part of the evaluation process also includes hearings with some of the consortia.
Yes, and actually, can you say a little bit more about the hearings? What do they usually look like? What's the idea behind the hearing? And do we invite all the proposals to or all the partners who have come in with an application to a hearing?
No, so there can be a number of proposals that are invited for a hearing, and it can be all, but it doesn't have to be all proposals.
That's following the recommendation of the international panel then, right?
Yes,
So,
yes. And the idea is that a group of people, part of the consortia, I think it's generally 5 people that we say can be part of the hearing. And it's a short presentation of the application, but then the main focus is for the evaluation panel to be able to put questions to the group to more clarify and understand what the proposal is about, and if there are some unclarities that they want to lift and discuss with the consortia. That's the reason for the hearing. And I think also it's a good chance for the evaluation panel to see if it's actually really a collaboration, and that different stakeholders have been part of actually forming the ideas and thoughts in the proposal, which is the idea of this collaborative or the like transdisciplinary research.
Thank you. So moving back again, we will, I think, finish up this very soon, just a few more minutes. But moving again to the possibility of finding partners for this call. If you look in the Q&A session, among the answered questions there, you will find some contact information for both of you, civil society organization, trying to find partners and interested in finding specifically research partners. But you will also find the contact information for Ideal Arena. Again, they are an umbrella organization with a wide network in the civil society in Sweden, and I think abroad also, that are willing to support here. So please look at those comments. Good. I don't know, is there some last, and is there a final question that we want to pick up, Åsa, or should we just finish off here?
I think we addressed most of them. It's I hope we did handle most of these now, or of course you're free to also contact us during this period with additional questions or clarifications.
Yes. So please get in touch, and I think that's one important message. Don't wait until the last minute, but because we have both Åsa and Birgitta and I are involved in quite a few other projects and processes at the moment. So get in touch as soon as you can, and don't hesitate to ask us any questions that you want to, or questions that may have come up after this session, and we will try our best to answer them. And thank you so much for joining, everybody. So we're really happy with the response of this call. We're hoping to get some very interesting proposals in, and hopefully a very good program at the end, right?
Yes, looking forward to that.
Yes, very much so. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.